Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So 3 days ago, I made a video going through every single playoff team's biggest weakness, the thing that could potentially hold them back from going on a deep run. And today, we're going to be a little bit more positive. We're going to look at the positives, the biggest strengths that every single playoff team has. Calgary has been eliminated, but we're going to go through all 17 potential teams. Obviously, Montreal and Columbus have not clinched at this point. It's looking like Montreal's probably going to make it, but with the way that they've been playing and the way that Columbus has been playing, anything's up in the air. Honestly, it's probably like a 50-50 at this point. But yeah, we're going to go through these 17 teams and what I think is their biggest asset that separates them from the field to potentially lift Lord Stanley when it's all said and done. And up first, the Toronto Maple Leafs. You can make an argument that their goalie tandem would be their biggest strength for the regular season. I think that it would be, but considering neither of those guys have a ton of Stanley Cup playoff experience and you can't really run a tandem in the playoffs, I'm going to go with the power play. When looking at the power play, it got off to a brutal start for the first month under Craig Berube, 8.8%, but since November 1st, it is clicking at a 28.3%, which is second in the entire NHL. And yeah, it's performing like we expected to perform when you have John Tavares, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, and Morgan Riley. And when looking at their potential, or not potential, it's their first round matchup now. It's locked in. The Ottawa Senators, they're 17th in the penalty kill. So yeah, Toronto, although they're only like 7th or 8th on the season in the power play, it's very clear that they were just adjusting to a new system, adjusting to a new coach. And now it's without a doubt one of the best units in the entire NHL. And you need good special teams to win the Stanley Cup. Speaking of good special teams, the New Jersey Devils special teams just overall are fantastic. 3rd this season in the power play, 4th in the penalty kill. Yes, they don't have Jack Hughes and they potentially might not have Jonas Siegenthaler, but still, these groups have been awesome. Sheldon Keefe has always been able to coach special teams. And when looking at their first round matchup that's also locked in, the Carolina Hurricanes, Carolina's first in terms of the penalty kill. They're always great at penalty killing, but their power play kind of stinks this season, 25th in the NHL. So they have a decided advantage in terms of overall special teams versus Carolina, even though Carolina has been such a good special teams wagon in prior seasons. For Tampa Bay, you got to go with the top 6. It's pretty basic. Kucherov, Point, Gensel, Hagel, Cirelli, insane top 5. And then at the deadline, they make that trade to get a guy like Yanni Gourde that's been playing up within their lineup. It's probably the best top 6 in the entire NHL. I don't think that it's that much of a debate. You could say maybe Dallas. You could say maybe Colorado. I think those teams have more depth. We might be talking about those depth later in the video. But yeah, what they bring from an offensive perspective and even defensively, guys like Point, Hagel, Cirelli, Gourde, all great defensively as well. It's awesome. They're first in the NHL in goals because their top 6 is so loaded. Yeah, it's awesome. They got an amazing front group. The Washington Capitals, on the flip side of that, I'm going to go with their defense core in its depth. When looking at John Carlson, reestablished himself as a top 15 defenseman in the NHL. Chychrun got paid like a top 30 guy, and he's been a top 30 guy this season. And then you got a bunch of like good second pair guys in Rasmus Sandin that's been playing on the top pair a decent amount. Matt Roy was a very good pickup in free agency for them, as well as Martin Farivari being a very underrated defenseman, in my opinion, especially defensively. And TVR is their number 6. He's a damn good number 6. Nothing special, but if he's your number 6, you got a damn good defense core. So when looking at them, especially if Lindgren might have to play in the first round, this defense core can make up for a lot of that because it's just a very balanced group and they seem to play very well together, and I think that's their big strength as of right now. The Los Angeles Kings, their 5-on-5 play is their clear strength. They're leading the NHL in goals percentage at 59.73% at 5-on-5. That is nuts, and even analytically, they're very good, only slightly behind the Carolina Hurricanes at 55.37. They've been a wagon at 5-on-5. Again, they don't have that superstar talent like their opponent, the Edmonton Oilers, in the first round, but their depth just really wears you down. They got 3 very good lines, as well as their pairs being very balanced and good. If they can stay at 5-on-5 against an Ekholm-less Edmonton Oilers, because Ekholm does a lot of the heavy lifting at 5-on-5, they'd win. They'd win if they can keep it at 5-on-5 and keep Edmonton's power play off the ice. Next up, we got the St. Louis Blues. I'm going to go with their forward depth. They don't have any superstar forwards, but I think that they do have a very deep forward core. Robert Thomas is a legit number 1 center. Kyrie's putting up like 35 and 35. Dylan Holloway is broken out. Buchnevich in prior years has been better, but still is, in my opinion, a first liner. So yeah, they got 4 very good forwards. Braden Shen, no longer the player that he was 5 years ago, but still like a 50-point okay second-line center. Jake Neighbors and Zach Bolduc have been awesome this season as like 45-ish point guys. And also, Snuggerud has made his debut. I believe he got his first point or first goal last night. And Dvorsky potentially could play a role come playoff time. So they have a pretty solid top 9. The rest of the team I don't exactly love. They also have a solid top 4 defense core. But yeah, I think the top 9 is pretty solid, and they're definitely deep within their top 9. So I'm going to go with that for their strength. Next up, the Carolina Hurricanes. The defense core, and more specifically, their consistency. They have not deviated from their pairs all season. Like, all of their pairs are at almost like 1,000 minutes played when it's Slavin, Burns, Chatfield, Orlov, or I guess that's reversed. Orlov's on the left side. And then you got Gothisbehere, Walker. Rod Brind'Amour has kept his pairs together, and they're all awesome. All of them have like a 55+% expected goals percentage. They're awesome. Meanwhile, New Jersey, their first-round opponent, have had some defensive inconsistencies. Pesce, Luke Hughes missed some time at the start of the season. Hamilton's been hurt recently. Siegenthaler's been hurt. So yeah, they have that consistency and just a damn good pair. They pair an offensive defenseman with a defensive defenseman, and it just works every single time, especially with Rod Brind'Amour as their coach. The Vegas Golden Knights, I'm going to go with their 3-headed defenseman trio. When they acquired Hanifin last year, they formed probably the best 1 through 3 in the NHL. There's definitely better duos out there like Colorado and Edmonton, but in terms of a 1 through 3, you got Theodore that was on pace for like a 70-point season, in my opinion, has been underrated in prior years, finally getting his respect, the top 15 to 20 defensemen in the NHL. Pietrangelo definitely still has it, especially offensively. He's like between 21 to 30 for me, and Hanifin's their number 3, and he's probably still a top 50 defenseman, 41 through 50 around there. As a result, they don't have to rely on one guy to play 28, 29, 30 minutes come the end of a series. They can relatively maintain rest and not overwork them. It's just special what they have in terms of that, and even after that, they have some depth. Guys like Nick Hage and Whitecloud. So yeah, they're 3-headed defenseman trio is absolutely horrifying for any team that's going to face them. For the Colorado Avalanche, it's got to be the top 9. This is a very, very impressive top 9. Chris McFarland made a lot of changes to this top 9 throughout the season, but coming into the playoffs, it's either the best or the second best, probably the second best. But yeah, McKinnon, Natchez, Nelson, Lehkonen, Nichushkin, Drouin, Coyle, Landeskog, Colton. Even with that, Logan O'Connor's going to have to play on the 4th line. He's one of the best defensive bottom sixers in the NHL. I don't expect Landeskog to be what he was in 2022, but even if he gets 75% of what he is, that's still a 55-point, very good physical middle sixer. So yeah, they no longer have that second superstar to Nathan McKinnon, but because of the moves by Chris McFarland this season, they are so deep throughout the lineup, and it's without a doubt their best forward core since they won the Stanley Cup. It's not as good as the 2022 one, don't get me wrong, but it's definitely it's closer to that than what it has been in prior years, if that makes sense. And as a result, they are definitely a threat to go on a deep run. Columbus, I'm going to go with their momentum and their vibes overall. They have won 5 straight games, 2 of those against the Washington Capitals, another win over the Ottawa Senators. It's not like they're beating absolute scrubs. And they're coming into the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, obviously Montreal has to lose, and then they have to win in regulation, I believe. But if you come into the playoffs, 6 straight wins with that momentum and the vibes that they have right now after overcoming the tragic loss of Johnny Gaudreau, the team, the city, they have just rallied around this bunch. And if I'm the Washington Capitals, who had that high moment with Ovechkin setting the goal record, and they have gone up and playing very good of late. I know that they locked up the East a while ago. It's not like they had much to play for, but a team like that coming in with that momentum is a little bit scary, and I think momentum does matter a little bit to a degree, especially as a wild card team coming in. I don't think if you locked up the East-West divisions and you lose a couple games going into it, I don't think that matters too much. But coming into it with that momentum that Columbus will have and a mentality like we're going to prove the entire world wrong. Everybody thought that we were going to suck. Now we're in the playoffs. Now let's do some damage. I think that's definitely a strength for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and on paper they're still not very good. So that's what I kind of had to go with. For the Minnesota Wild, I'm going to go with specifically their top 4. I don't exactly love that bottom pair of like Zach Bogosian and Merrill, but the top two pairs are very good, especially defensively. They're 2 pairs defensively. Faber and Middleton. Middleton has really popped off this season after he signed that extension that was a little bit questionable on. And Faber, not quite as good as his rookie year, but still chowing on like 24, 25 minutes a night and has been solid. Their pair has outscored opponents 32-27. And then Spurgeon and Brodin, although they're getting up there in age, they are still extremely elite and extremely shut down. This season have a 58 58.1% goals percentage, and the sixth best expected goals percentage at 59.2% among D pairs with at least 300 minutes, sixth out of 114. So they definitely still got it, especially from a defensive perspective. And yeah, I really like that top four defensively. They got to find a way to kill penalties, as we talked about in the weaknesses. But at even strength, they've been a top 10, maybe even top 5 defense because of what they brought to the table defensively with those two pairs. Dallas, this one's obvious, pretty obvious as well, much like their weakness. It's their forward depth. They're top 9, similarly to Colorado. I'd probably take theirs over Colorado. But yeah, it's amazing. It is Robertson, Hintz, Johnston, Rantanen, Marchment, Duchesne, Ben, Sagan, if Sagan returns, and Mikael Granlund. Basically, since the Mikael Granlund trade, they have been leading the NHL in goals at 3.78 per game. This is what this team needs, especially when you look at what we talked about before, the right side of the defense. They're going to need to put up some goals in the playoffs, and they have in prior years, and as a result have made back-to-back years of the Western Conference Finals. Yeah, their forward depth is nuts. They don't have a potential superstar forward, considering how Mikko Rantanen has looked, and even before that, I didn't have him as like a top 8 forward, but they just have a lot of elite guys, and even their third line would be a lot of teams' second lines, a lot of playoff teams, fringe playoff teams, second lines, or some of those guys would even be on the first line. They are loaded at the forward court. Next up, we got the Montreal Canadiens. Their biggest strength is having Lane Hutson and Nick Suzuki. This team is kind of not that good outside of the two, but they are playing on an all NHL level. Nick Suzuki, since Four Nations, has 14 goals, 21 assists, 35 points in 25 games. He's been a legit top 10 player in the NHL since Four Nations. As for Lane Hutson, he's been around the point per game defenseman for the last 2 to 3 months. These guys have been carrying this team. They're not that good of a team, if I'm being honest, given their depth and so on. Montembeau's okay in net. It's just these two guys that have been carrying them. I don't think that's disrespectful to say. I think Canadian fans would agree with me on that. These two guys are the strengths, the core of the team right now, and have carried it and have been playing like a top 6, top 7 defenseman and a top 10 overall player in the NHL. And if these guys continue to get hot, they could be a problem for the Washington Capitals come the first round. The Winnipeg Jets, goaltending. It's got to be goaltending. I know what people might say. Connor Hellebuck has been bad in the playoffs the last 2 years, and that has been true to a degree. I think the defense core is more to blame for those performances, but he has had solid playoff runs. I don't like this notion that he is this all-time playoff joker like the players on the Toronto Maple Leafs. He has a .922 in the 2018 run where they made the Western Conference Finals. In 2021, he had a .933. He has performed in the playoffs. The team just hasn't really been up to snuff, especially against Vegas in 2023. Last year, they were just overwhelmed, and Hellebuck didn't play good. Don't get me wrong. He is a clear advantage for Winnipeg. He is going to be by far the best goalie in the Western Conference. Doesn't have to deal with Vasilevsky, and Shesterkin didn't make the playoffs. And in the West, the only goalie that has kind of been remotely on his level in the last 3 to 4 months is Darcy Kemper, who he won't have to face until the Western Conference Finals. Yeah, Winnipeg, he's going to be going up against Jordan Binnington, clearly better than him, even though Binnington has been good in the playoffs. And then Dallas, I like Ottinger a lot. I like Blackwood, but they're not on the same level as Connor Hellebuck. It is a decisive advantage, and if he plays like he did before the last 2 playoff runs, they have a decent shot of making the Western Conference Finals. For Ottawa, I'm going to go with their physicality. They absolutely throw the body, and it's not like it's just their depth guys throwing out hits. Their top guys throw a lot of hits. Brady Tkachuk, 227 hits this season. Batherson, 147. Ridley Gregg, 137. Stützle, 129. Cousins has 56 in 20 games. They rank 4th in the NHL in hits. So for a team that is a little bit on the softer side, or some of their stars are on the softer side, like the Toronto Maple Leafs, that is definitely a strength that they will have in terms of high-end talent, being able to kind of set the tone physically in that series. For the Florida Panthers, I'm going to go with forward depth, but more so two-way forward depth. Colorado's forward depth, I think, is more offensive. They have some good defensive players as well, but when you look at Florida, they have amazing, in Dallas as well, they have amazing defensive forward depth. When looking at it, Reinhart and Barkov probably should be two Calder Selke finalists this season. They are some of the best defensive forwards in the NHL. Sam Bennett is a physical defensive menace. Brad Marchand has been awesome in prior years defensively, still is good defensively. And then their third line has guys like Lundell, Luostarinen, and Rodriguez. And when you look at it, they're going to need their forwards to defend a decent amount, because that defense core is arguably one of their bigger weaknesses, because Seth Jones has not been a fix-all. I love Forsling a lot, but that defense core is not what it was last year and what other Stanley Cup teams have looked like. So they're going to need their forwards to play a lot of defense. But I think they're up to the challenge. They were up to it last year and the year before that. And then lastly for Edmonton, their biggest strength is they're almost always going to have the two best players in the series outside of Colorado, who they won't have to face until the Western Conference Finals. And then even then, you can somewhat argue that Draisaitl's better than McKinnon, but it's more of like a 2A, 2B in my opinion. They're going to have the better players. When looking at LA, they might have the three best players if Evan Bouchard actually shows up. But yeah, McDavid and Draisaitl, they show up in the playoffs every single year. McDavid has the third highest playoff points per game of all time. Draisaitl's in fifth, but the guy in fourth has only played like 32 playoff games in his career. He's awesome. They show up, unlike maybe some other superstars. Last year, McDavid won the Conn Smythe despite losing. And Draisaitl, although his overall stat line wasn't too impressive, it was like 31 points in 25 games. In his first 12 games, he had 24 points, 8 goals. It's clear that he got hurt in the start of the Dallas series, or at the end of who they play in the second round. Why am I blanking on this? Who did they play in the second round? They beat LA, and then they played Vancouver. How did I forget that? I'm leaving that in. That was bad. But yeah, these two guys ball out every year and show up when it matters most. And as a result, that is their big advantage, relying on their superstar talents. And that's why I understand why people would be like, yeah, LA's playing great. Yeah, LA's deeper. Yeah, LA is better goaltending. We have the far and away the two best players. And as a result, we're going to beat the shit out of them. I think Draisaitl had like 17 points, and what was it, last year or 2 years before that in the series against LA. I perfectly understand where they're coming from. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about these strengths? What are some strengths that you would give out? Peace.